I was just about to delete the raise request when Layla's reply popped in, 5 words, sharp and cold. Be grateful you even have a job. No greeting, no sign-off. Just that. Like she was smirking as she typed it, probably sitting behind that ridiculous marble desk she loved so much. The thing is, I wasn't even the one who asked for the raise. That was Ethan. Quiet, respectful, always steady Ethan. The guy who literally built the system that runs all of our automation. A man who could streamline data in his sleep, who stayed late without being asked, who still brought bagels every Thursday, even after they completely forgot his 10-year anniversary with the company. And he wasn't asking for much. Just a raise to match inflation. 5 years without a single adjustment. Not even a basic cost of living increase. And that's the message he got back. Not from HR. Not from payroll. But from Layla Kenwick, the director's wife. That's when things started to feel off. The request didn't just get ignored, it got intercepted. Layla had been advising Miles ever since the merger, but nobody expected her to basically take over people ops. One week she's clinking glasses at the quarterly party in a feathered blazer, taking selfies with the interns, and the next she's denying career paths with a frozen Chardonnay smile. ROI per body, Miles always said. Like we were just metrics, not human beings. Ethan just shrugged when I brought it up and said, "Guess loyalty's too expensive these days." Later that afternoon, I walked past his desk. He looked still. Not angry. Not even disappointed. Just still. Like someone had flipped a switch from doer to watcher. I watched him close out his console, open up some program I didn't recognize, and export something to an external drive. "You good?" I asked. "Yep," he said. "Just backing a few things up." Let me pause here for a sec. If you're into stories where the quiet ones finally get the last word, where karma actually lands, do me a quick favor. Hit that like button and subscribe. I know everyone says it, but seriously, 97% of you haven't hit subscribe yet, and it really does help more than you think. Alright, let's keep going. What I didn't realize then, but would learn in brutal detail soon enough, was that Ethan's backups weren't just standard saves. They were precise, surgical, intentional. He wasn't just archiving code, he was preserving his fingerprint. Ethan Barlow wasn't just the lead systems architect. He was the architect. Every logic tree, every automation flow, every single alert setting, it all pointed back to one core module he had designed from the ground up. And the licensing contract for that core? It expired 3 weeks earlier. Guess who didn't sign the renewal? Right, Ethan. Not because he was being spiteful, but because no one followed up. In the chaos of the merger, legal dropped the ball. And Layla, the genius behind Be Grateful, decided to remind him just how disposable they thought he was. Thing is, gratitude's a tricky currency. Ethan had been paying it forward for 12 years. Day in, day out. With every overtime hour, every flawless line of code. But even that kind of loyalty has a limit. And when it runs out, there's no explosion. Just silence. And silence? That's when you should have started worrying. Because when Ethan went quiet, the real timer started ticking. The first email he sent was completely professional. Subject line: IP contract renewal action required. He CC'd legal, included links to the original contract, and even highlighted the expiration clause. No shouting. No sarcasm. Just clean, composed Ethan. He gave them a few days. Checked his inbox a little more often than usual. Nothing. So he sent a follow-up. Even more polite. Just a gentle nudge. Still nothing. Then, right on schedule, the calendar invite hit. Q3 Strategic Monetization Review. Theme: Leverage points in proprietary technology. Translation: Let's parade Ethan's work around like cattle at an auction. Miles even dropped some line in Slack like he was giving a keynote. Let's show these guys how much margin we squeeze out of Ethan's code. Like Ethan wasn't even there. Like he was just furniture in the background. Layla threw a thumbs up under it, then added one of those obnoxious wink emojis. I just stared at it longer than I should have, wondering how people who build nothing are always the first to grab credit. Ethan didn't say a word. Didn't react. Didn't even log off. He just turned to his second monitor, leaned in slightly and got to work. And in that moment I saw it. No slump. No sigh. Just purpose. There was this subtle shift in Ethan, quiet, controlled, like he'd flipped into a whole new mode. He navigated to a legal platform I didn't recognize and started uploading blocks of code. Each one tagged with timestamps, signature traces, version hashes. One line after another, all locked down, timestamped, notarized, encrypted. That's when it hit me. He wasn't polishing up a portfolio. He was setting up a perimeter. I watched him download the last working version of the logic core and install a validation layer I didn't even know existed. And here's the kicker. Ethan never added security features without looping in DevSec. But this one, it wasn't for the company. It was for him. A kind of legal fingerprint buried deep in the code. A tripwire disguised as a checksum. And it had bite. Later that day I passed his desk again. Same old coffee mug. Same little plant. Same stack of dog-eared API manuals. But his face, that was new. He looked like a guy who'd stopped waiting for things to get better and started laying the fuse himself. I leaned against the cubicle wall. "You all good?" I asked. He didn't even look up. Just gave a single nod. "They want leverage," he said. "I'm giving them friction." There was no bitterness in his voice. That's what really got me. No sarcasm. No anger. Just certainty. That calm, cold clarity you only see in someone who's been overlooked one too many times and finally decides it's time to act. A few hours later, I checked the internal commit history. Ethan's name was still stamped across every core component. No co-authors. No reviewers. Just him. 12 years of revisions, all tied to a single developer. And because of the merger chaos, nobody had remembered to renew the license. No paperwork. No legal signature. Which meant we were already knee-deep in risk, running mission-critical systems on software we didn't officially have the rights to use. But Ethan knew. And he wasn't asking anymore. He was archiving, documenting, locking it all down. Not for court, at least not yet. He was building something stronger. Something silent. And the worst part? Miles and Layla were too busy prepping their little boardroom performance to even notice the floor was already giving way beneath them. Thursday morning, 8:55 a.m. sharp. The kind of day that smells like money and feels like everyone's faking calm. Blazers pressed, espresso in hand, smiles practiced in the elevator mirror. Quarterly board review day. Always a show. But this time, you could feel the ego in the air like cologne. Fairfax Holdings sent in their top dogs. The merger partners had reps on site. Even the regional VP showed up, which only ever happened when bonuses were in play. And right in the spotlight, sitting like they were about to host the Emmys, were Miles and Layla. Grinning in sync, wearing matching watches, basking in their own hype. Miles clapped like a motivational speaker. "All right, folks, let's dive in." He tapped the clicker, and the big screen behind him came to life. Smooth blue dashboard. All the charts and trend lines pointing up. Optimized systems. Improved margins. All thanks to Ethan's core. This, Miles announced proudly, is the heartbeat of Axtra's post-merger engine. Fully streamlined. Fully proprietary. All ours. That's when it happened. Right as he switched to the next slide, a pop-up blinked onto the screen. First, it looked like some routine system alert. Maybe a scheduled update. But then someone near the front read it out loud. Unlicensed use detected. Daily liability activated. $45,000. The room froze. Every breath stopped at once. Miles tilted his head, squinting like he must have misread it. What the hell is that? The screen blinked again. Same message. But now it was red. And underneath it, runtime penalty clock 1 second. Layla let out this short, nasal laugh. Okay, cute. That's just a leftover test message or something. Ignore it. But legal wasn't laughing. In fact, they weren't moving at all. Ramirez, the company's lead counsel, leaned forward and clicked his pen once. Calmly but firmly, he said, "Pause the deck." Miles didn't even hear him. He was too busy trying to kill the pop-up. Jabbing the trackpad like that would shut it down. Layla crossed her arms. Seriously? We're worried about a pop-up now. But the alert didn't vanish. And it wasn't a joke. Ramirez stood up slowly, pulled a slim black folder from his briefcase, and started flipping through it. No drama. No panic. Just quiet, efficient motion, like a man following a checklist he'd hoped he'd never need. Then he looked up and asked, "Can we confirm that we have a signed, active licensing agreement on file for use of the proprietary logic core, specifically the modular version powering this dashboard? Miles blinked, froze in place. What? Yeah, of course. It's our code. Ramirez didn't even flinch. Who signed the agreement? Miles stammered. I mean, legal did. Or maybe finance. I don't know, somebody did, right? He turned to Layla, his eyes scanning hers like he was begging for backup. Didn't Ethan renew it last quarter? Layla squinted like she was trying to focus through fog. He sent something. I told him we'd get to it after budget season. You said we were cutting back on redundancies. Yeah, but… Miles glanced around the room. Silence. One of the investors leaned forward, fingers steepled. Another tapped quietly on a tablet. No one looked amused anymore. Ramirez calmly slid a page across the table. The last signed licensing agreement we have is from 3 years ago. No renewals since. And according to Clause 4.2b, unless renewed, all ownership rights and protections revert to the original software architect. Layla's mouth opened, but nothing came out. Miles raked his hand through his hair. So, what does that actually mean? Ramirez spoke slowly, every word dropping like a weight. It means you're showcasing proprietary technology you don't have legal access to. Every minute this dashboard is live, the company is liable for $45,000. And depending on interpretation, that may apply retroactively. The screen flashed again. 49 seconds. Unlicensed use continues. The whole room froze over. Investors stared at Miles like he'd just sunk the ship. Layla looked down at her phone. No notifications, no rescue, just that blinking red message. Because this wasn't some debug alert. It was a bill. And the meter had only just started running. Ramirez never raised his voice. He didn't need to. The moment he opened the tabbed contract and laid it on the glass table, the temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Let's begin with something simple, he said, still looking at the paperwork. Do we currently have a renewed signed licensing agreement on file, countersigned by the creator of the modular logic core? Every head turned toward Miles. He blinked. Once. Twice. I mean, we own that, don't we? Ramirez lifted his eyes, slow and deliberate. According to Clause 4.2b, ownership remains with the original architect unless explicitly transferred through a current, active license. That transfer must be signed by both parties. The last document on file, he tapped the page with a sharp, clean motion, is 3 years old. Signed by Ethan Barlow. Nothing since. The silence was immediate. No fidgeting. No whispers. Not even the usual background hum. Just stillness. Layla let out a half-laugh, half-scoff. That can't be right. Ethan sent the draft. I told him we'd hold off until budget season wrapped. We were consolidating vendors. Ramirez's tone didn't change. He's not a vendor. He's the architect. Without that renewal, all usage is unauthorized. Miles looked like someone realizing the brakes had failed, after already flying past the warning signs. He asked about it. Sent a reminder. Then another follow-up. Layla turned sharply toward him. You said you'd take care of it. And you said we were cutting deadweight, he snapped. Oh, I'm sorry, she shot back, her voice climbing. Did I also tell you to wire his code into every core process like it was open source? I was following your lead. You were busy picking out custom jackets for your ROI summit. Because you told me optics mattered. Because you wanted to look like a damn innovator, Miles. And you told me the licensing thing was fluff. I didn't think it was real. It was Ethan. He barely even speaks in meetings. The table couldn't contain the blame. It ricocheted between them like a live grenade, arguments bouncing back and forth while everyone else watched in stunned silence. Then a senior investor cleared his throat. One low sound that cracked through the noise like thunder. Am I hearing this correctly? He asked, slow and measured. We're facing potentially hundreds of thousands in liability, because your wife made an executive decision without consulting legal? Miles opened his mouth, closed it again. Layla flushed deep and fast. Not angry red. Exposed red. Her voice dropped to a whisper. This wasn't supposed to happen. It's Ethan. He's not like that. Ramirez closed the folder with finality. Apparently he is. The screen blinked once more. 6 minutes and 41 seconds. Unlicensed use ongoing. Ramirez looked at the board chair, then at the investors. Until usage rights are reestablished, I strongly recommend halting all core automation immediately. We're not just in breach, we're in live violation. And every second adds to the damage. Layla stared at the screen, then slowly turned to Miles. Fix it. I can't, Miles whispered. Call him. He didn't budge. Layla leaned in closer, voice low but sharp. Call him. And that's when it really hit everyone in the room. They weren't sure if Ethan would even answer, because somewhere along the way the entire center of gravity had shifted. Ethan wasn't orbiting them anymore. They were orbiting him. Down at the front, someone from IT, Jared I think, was already under the table yanking cables like that would stop the bleeding. Another dev tried spinning up a backup version off an old server tucked away in storage B. Miles snapped, roll back to V6. That one's clean. Layla stood behind him, stiff and silent, arms crossed, her eyes locked on the screen like she could squint the red blinking out of existence. Then the second pop-up appeared. Unauthorized signature detected. License validation failed. Ramirez didn't blink. Try another version. They ran V5. Same error. Someone muttered, Jesus. Jared crawled back up, pale and sweating. We've gone all the way back to version 3. Every single module links to Ethan's validation signature. Even the non-executables are flagging his compiled hash. There's no clean copy. Miles just sat there, mouth open like he wanted to speak, but the words got jammed somewhere between panic and ego. Layla reached out to touch his arm, but he pulled away. That was the first time I'd seen that. Finally, the board chair spoke. Can someone explain, he asked slowly, how we managed to build an entire product suite around code we don't legally own and can't legally operate? Ramirez looked like a man who was both completely vindicated and deeply tired. The answer, he said flatly, is sitting in your HR inbox. And in clause 4.2b, which you ignored. One of the younger investors, probably someone from the tech side, pulled out his phone, tapped around, then looked up. Ethan Barlow. He's listed on the USPTO as the sole software architect and intellectual property holder for the modular logic core. Filed under ACTRA designation variant 3. That's this. He turned his screen to the room. It was the official U.S. Patent and Trademark Office entry. Plain as day. One name. Barlow Ethan M. Independent architect. No ACTRA. No shell company. No clever legal tricks. Just Ethan. Layla's jaw clenched. He must have filed that before the merger. Ramirez nodded. And the company failed to challenge it during the merger window. Which means he opened his own laptop, logged into the licensing portal, clicked through a few fields, then turned it around slowly like a judge passing down a sentence. The screen showed the current active ownership certificate. Fully time-stamped. Legally binding. One name again. Ethan M. Barlow, current license holder. Miles collapsed back into his chair. That's not possible. Ramirez didn't blink. You built an empire on land you didn't own. And the landowner just changed the locks. The blinking counter ticked on in the corner of the screen. $45,000. $90,000. $135,000. Layla finally spoke, her voice barely audible. Can we get him on the phone? Ramirez gently shut the laptop. At this point, you'd better hope he calls you. 2 hours. That's how long they sat in that boardroom, frozen in their high-back chairs, watching the liability clock tick up like some kind of karmic slot machine. $90,000 in theoretical damages, and we hadn't even hit lunch. No one asked for coffee. No one left for a bathroom break. The only movement was the slow, awkward shifting of hands wiping sweat off $1,000 suits. Those chairs that once screamed executive power? Now they just looked like cheap seats in a waiting room before a corporate execution. Miles, bless his stubborn heart, still thought he could bluff his way out. All right, worst case scenario, he said, voice cracking slightly. We shut everything down. Wipe the stack. Rebuild from the ground up. Our dev team can recreate the logic core without touching Ethan's code. Right. He looked around, fishing for agreement. Silence. Then Jared, still ghost white, gave a slow shake of his head. It's not that simple. The logic core is the system. Every automation script, every alert, every failsafe. It all hooks into the framework Ethan designed. You unplug that? You're not patching it. You're demolishing the whole building. Miles scoffed, desperate now. Then fine. Do it. Rebuild. Tell Devasky to sanitize the stack and spin up a clean version. Jared tapped his pen against the table, hand twitching. That's the problem, he said quietly. We already tried. Once we modify anything downstream of the original license without proper authorization, Jared said, we trigger clause 9.3 of the retroactive agreement. Ramirez crossed his arms. That's the damages clause. Layla leaned in, her voice tight. Retroactive. Ramirez didn't blink. Every unauthorized deployment, past or present, accumulates penalties. That includes any attempt to bypass the signature layer. If you alter it, you acknowledge using it. And since you're not the licensee, he let the silence finish the sentence. Miles rubbed his temples like it might help squeeze out a solution. Okay, but someone on the dev team has to be able to recreate it. Jarrett, anybody. That's when someone in the corner spoke up. Natalie, a junior dev barely out of school. Ethan didn't code like the rest of us, she said, almost a whisper. Every head turned toward her. She hesitated but kept going. He built everything by hand. No AI assistants. No third-party libraries. He'd write entire subsystems in raw assembly just so he could control every layer of logic himself. No comments. No documentation. Nothing in Confluence. His brain, it only lives in the code. And the only one who understands it is him. Layla mumbled something under her breath. Miles slumped back in his chair, eyes dull. So we're screwed. Natalie winced. I'm saying he is the tech. Ramirez nodded once. Which makes him the sole licensor. The board chair turned slowly toward Miles. You pitched this platform as a fully scalable company-owned asset. You claimed we had full rights to every line of code. Miles didn't answer. He couldn't. The counter ticked again. $112,500. Silence settled over the room, broken only by the soft, rhythmic tapping of Layla's nails against her coffee lid. Click, click, click. Like she was trying to wake herself up. But this wasn't a bad dream. It was a reckoning. And deep down everyone knew. It wasn't over yet. At exactly 12:17 p.m., the boardroom doors opened with a quiet click. But the impact? Nuclear. Every head turned at once, like it had been choreographed. There he was. Ethan Barlow. Same black polo. Same worn jeans. Same wireframe glasses he probably hadn't changed since college. No swagger. No theatrics. Just calm, focused presence. In his left hand, a single USB drive. In his right, a slim manila folder. He didn't pause. Didn't acknowledge the digital disaster playing out behind Miles on the screen. Just walked in like gravity pulled him there, stepped up to the table, and gave the board chair a subtle nod. Nothing flashy, just enough to say, I'm here. Let's fix this. Miles stood up too fast, bumping the table. Ethan, we were just about to. Ethan didn't even glance at him. He moved with purpose. Plugged the USB into the master control panel beneath the display. No speech. No drama. Just a quiet string of keystrokes. A 32-character passphrase typed like it was muscle memory. Then blink. The penalty counter disappeared. The dashboard reset. No more pop-ups. No red alerts. Just clean data. The whole room exhaled at once, but no one dared say a word. Not even Layla. She sat frozen, hands clenched, staring at the screen like one wrong move would bring the red back. Ethan removed the USB, slid it back into his pocket, and turned to legal. He handed Ramirez a single sheet from the folder. Formal notice of license terms, he said, calm as ever. Filed with the USPTO last week. Confirmation received. Timestamp included. Ramirez took the page, reading every line. His eyebrows lifted just slightly. Respect. Maybe even admiration. Then he nodded once. Thank you, Mr. Barlow. Ethan didn't respond. No smile. No nod. Just turned and walked toward the door like he hadn't just stopped a six-figure bleed with a few lines of code. Miles stepped forward. Wait, Ethan, we should talk about. Ethan didn't slow down. Layla opened her mouth. Maybe to apologize, maybe to plead. But he never looked at her. He didn't need to. His silence said everything. He didn't walk in for revenge. He walked in for control. And now, everyone in that room understood exactly who had it. They called a break. No announcement. No wrap-up. Just a quiet collapse. Just a quiet instruction from the board chair. No drama. No raised voices. Just chairs sliding back and whispers low enough to hide beneath the hum of the air conditioning. Miles didn't move at first, just sat there, hands clasped, like he was trying to hold together whatever was left of the version of himself that hadn't just been taken apart in front of half a dozen high-level investors. Layla was already gone. She'd slipped out during the silence that followed Ethan's exit. No one said anything. No one asked where she went. When we regrouped 27 minutes later, everything looked the same, but felt entirely different. Same stiff chairs. Same espresso rings on the glass table. Same sunlight cutting through the blinds. But the air wasn't heavy anymore. The tension was gone. What replaced it was focus. Precision. The board chair entered first, followed by Ramirez and another legal counsel. Someone new, probably an outside advisor. They placed a single folder in front of Ethan's seat. He was already there. Calm. No phone. No tablet. No nervous energy. Just waiting. Mr. Barlow, the chair said, tapping the folder once. We've reviewed the licensing terms and the formal notice you submitted. Legal has prepared reinstatement documentation in line with your filing, along with a corrective agreement regarding oversight. Ethan opened the folder. Just 3 pages. No filler. No vague language. Just direct terms and hard lines. The first page. Official reinstatement of his role as external IP custodian. Full authority to approve or suspend any use of the modular logic core across the entire company ecosystem. The second, updated licensing terms. Triple the original rate. Effective immediately. Non-negotiable. The third, retroactive forgiveness of all damages, but only if Ethan maintained active oversight. The liability counter? Erased. But one unauthorized code change going forward, and the entire penalty would snap back into effect with interest. He read each page once, said nothing, made no corrections. He signed his initials on the second page, bottom right, and slid the folder back across the table. The room went silent, like a ceasefire had just been signed in ink instead of blood. Ramirez gave a small nod. It's done. The board chair leaned in. Effective immediately. Ethan Barlow resumes oversight as the sole licensee. He turned. Mr. Kenwick. Miles looked up slowly like a kid being called to the front of the class. You'll be placed on reassignment leave, pending review. No protest. No excuses. Just a nod. He picked up his tablet like it could shield him from the fallout. No one asked about Layla. The chair didn't mention her. We didn't need him to. She wasn't coming back. Not to that room. Not after what that room had seen. Ethan stood. Took his copy of the agreement. Walked to the door, no rush, no glance back. No smirk. No victory speech. He didn't look at a single person who tried to erase him from his own creation. He didn't have to, because order wasn't negotiated. It had simply returned. 1 week later, we were back in the investor room. Same skyline. Same high-polished floors. But the mood? Completely changed. The buzzwords were gone. No more disruption. No more synergy. The talk now was about control, about oversight, about stability, words nobody had cared about until they remembered how it felt to lose them. The quarterly investor update was short. No fancy videos. No slick branding. Just hard facts. Streamlined ops. Compliance improvements. Active risk management. Miles's name never came up. Layla's didn't exist. Her email had already been rerouted to a generic HR inbox. No one asked why. They didn't have to. Rooms like this don't care about explanations. They care about outcomes. And it wasn't until the final slide that the full shift came into view. Bottom right corner, beneath a plain gray header labeled Custodial Controls. Core Logic IP Custodian Eve Barlow Independent Licensee. No embellishment. No bloated title. Just the name that mattered. A hand rose near the back. Older investor, tailored suit, memory sharp. Is the penalty feature still active? He asked. All eyes turned to the screen. Ethan had dialed in remotely. Camera off. Just a black tile marked EB. A beat passed. Then his voice came through, calm, clear, and unmistakable. "Yes," he said. And the director was right. Ownership is earned. No one said a word after that. They didn't need to. In the bottom corner of the screen, one final image stayed behind. A still frame of the liability counter, frozen at $0, with Ethan's digital watermark resting just beneath it. It wasn't there for flair. It wasn't branding. It was a warning. A silent signature stamped across the very foundation of the system they thought they owned. Every script, every trigger, every automated decision their future depended on. It all carried his mark. He didn't brag. He didn't need to log in with his camera on or take a victory lap, because the win had already happened. And as the call ended and the boardroom slowly emptied, no noise, no chatter, just a quiet kind of reverence. That final line kept echoing in my head. Something Ethan had said once years ago, when someone made a lazy joke about legacy code and how everyone's replaceable. At the time we laughed it off. Now it felt like a prophecy. Be grateful I even picked up the phone.